evening, everybody. Welcome to episode 30 of the SMB Talks. As I mentioned last week, we have some fantastic guests lined up for the month of February. So today, as a marketer with so much of experience, one thing which I always struggle is with public relations. Working in this field, I still have no idea what all does this field encompasses, right? For most of us, it's just press releases. That's the start and end of public relations. So I was looking around my network and on the Twitter world, etc., to bring on the right expert who can give us some tips, especially for small and medium businesses, about public relations. And I found today's guest, fortunately, on Twitter. She is none other than Michelle Garrett. She is a public relations consultant, a content creator, blogger, speaker, and an award-winning writer. Her articles and advice has been featured in Entrepreneur, Muck Rack, Ragan's PR Daily, Meltwater, Attorney at Work, Spin Sucks, FairyGodBoss, ThomasNet, Forbes, and many other places. She was named a top digital PR leader in 2020, and her blog was on the list of top 25 must-read public relations blog. I love the content she shares, the insights she shares on LinkedIn and Twitter. I follow her thoroughly. She was also selected as one of the top 13 content marketing influencers to follow. She is the founder and host of Freelance Chat, a weekly Twitter chat. If you want to learn more about freelancing, etc., you should attend this chat one of these days for freelancers and self-employed consultants. She specializes in crafting content, strategy, and programs for leading B2B organizations who want to get noticed. She launched a business in Silicon Valley and now is back to her roots in Central Ohio. Her business is EDGE and WBE, which is Women Business Enterprise Certified in the state of Ohio. So without further ado, let me bring her on.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. So good to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. So is it too cold there? You are all covered up.
Well, it's a scarf, but yeah, it is cold. It's not cold in my office, but outside it is a little cold, actually. Yes. Yeah, we're in the dead of winter, so it's like in the 20s, I
think. Same here. All right. So, Michelle, just to give a background about the show, this I started when the COVID-19 kicked off, and the sole purpose was to bring on people like you and guests like you to give some inspiration to the people who are struggling. Give some insights from your journey as in your area of work, etc., etc. So I have curated a set of 12 to 13 questions for you, which is totally about public relations, about you, your work, etc., etc. So if you're ready, we can start.
Absolutely. Fire away.
All right. So my first question, Michelle, you're one of the established writers and PR consultants in the US, and you were even named top digital PR leader in 2020. So how did this journey into PR and content start?
Well, it started a long time ago. The writing started when I was really young. I mean, I was always into writing and just really enjoyed, just kind of creative writing, I guess, from a very young age. And I always kept a journal. I was always writing like poems and things, just writing. And so when I got to high school, we had a paper, like a high school paper. So I worked on the paper and I was a reporter and kind of a jack of all trades. And then when I went into college, of course, I studied journalism with a concentration in public relations. And I think the public relations kind of came in because I thought I probably thought it sounded kind of glamorous at the time. But it's not always, like planning party, that's not really the kind of PR that I do. I know some people do that and it's a needed, skill, but that's not really the kind of PR that I focus on. So, yeah.
All right. That's fantastic. Right. So, PR is a field which for layman, it starts and ends with press release, as I mentioned. Most of us, that's the understanding about that. Is it just that, or there is more to public relations. What is it exactly? What all comes under this umbrella of public relations?
Well, there is kind of a mystique about public relations. I think a lot of people don't really know what it is and what it can do. To your point. And so it's not just press releases. I do think, you can get stuck in that mode. And I think we're going to talk more about press releases a little later. So I won't go into my spiel about press releases right now. Sure. But under the PR umbrella, which it usually, it's under marketing, of course, usually. It's become, it's always been about thought leadership, reputation management, and then how do you do that? Like, how do you get to that point? That could be through, writing contributed articles. It could be through appearing on, podcasts and shows and things. It could be, you can do all kinds of things to get there. Right. So then that's kind of like figuring out the strategy. Where do you want to be? Where's your audience? How do you reach your audience? And if you're a public company, you have stakeholders you have to reach. So you need investor relations. That's part of it. Right. Crisis, which is a big part of it these days for a lot of companies. Yep. One wrong tweet or one customer complaint can go viral. And you're like, because you used to have, without social media, you'd have plenty of time to go back and talk to your advisors and kind of plan out what you were going to do. But now you really have to kind of almost think through possible crisis scenarios before they even happen, and right. Be kind of ready with your team, of people that you can call and just get on it right away. Because if you don't respond, of course, it gets worse. So I think that's really important. Those right. Are just some things. It's a lot of things, really.
Yeah. I think with the advent of digital channels, I think PR has become much more intricate and tough field to be in, I guess. Yeah. Right. So going on, why do you think public relations is a key area to focus for organizations, and what are some of the key results organizations can achieve by investing in PR?
Well, I think it's a key area because I think that more than ever, customers, consumers, whether it's business to business or business to consumer, people are who is buying your product, solutions, services, whatever it is. And those people want transparency. I think we've learned, at least I can speak for here in the States, we've learned that telling the truth and being honest and forthright is more important than it's ever been. And we don't trust people who don't tell us the truth. We don't trust companies, businesses that don't tell us the truth.
Right.
And so in that way, to me, public relations can help build those bridges and hopefully kind of pull back the curtain sometimes, and in a good way, Right. Of course, we get labeled spin doctors, we try to help with things that, are less than good, sometimes, but right. But not, I don't think you ought to cover up things. If you made a mistake, you probably just need to come out and admit that you made a mistake, and what are you going to do to make it right? That's the best way to address that. So I forget what your question was. I got off on a tangent. Sorry.
That's absolutely fine. That's a very good, valid point which you mentioned. Owning your mistakes is very important for brands these days, and a lot of brands are setting the right examples. The question was, what are the key areas to focus, and what are the benefits? What are the benefits by investing in PR for organizations?
Yeah, well, and the other thing, I think there's kind of a myth that it has to be expensive, which it can be expensive, just like any kind of marketing, just like SEO, you could do it yourself, or you could hire an agency and spend, a lot of money every month on. So PR is similar in that you can do it yourself. You can hire, an agency, you could hire a consultant. There are different options available. Right. And so I don't think you ought to dismiss it as something, we can't afford. But return on investment wise, it has been historically a little bit difficult to measure sometimes the impact of PR on a business. Right. And so I think we're trying to get better at that by, you can see if a story appears, you can track and see how many people read it and went to your website. Sometimes social media also falls in PR's lap or, right. in that department. And so, of course, you can track some of those results as well, things like that. And then there's just kind of an overall, of course, there are tools you can use to measure like social listening, who's talking about you. You can tell the impact that it's having, I believe. And then, of course, if you're getting media coverage, you hope it's in the right places. And there are tools. I know you talked to Rand Fishkin about SparkToro. I think that is a new tool that's going to help help PR people and businesses kind of get to the audiences where they're at. It might not always be the Wall Street Journal. And I love that he talks about that. Yeah. It's a real issue for PR pros to go into a meeting with executives and like, we want to be in the Wall Street. Well, everybody wants to be in the Wall Street Journal. So this is not realistic, and that might not really be benefiting you that much. So if you really want to get some benefit out of your PR, I think it's very important to find out where is your audience, who are you trying to talk to, and where are they spending time.
Right. Yeah, you are right. Rand, when he came on the show, he mentioned about the egos of executives. They want to be in one particular publication because of their ego and things like that. So all right. So since I focus mostly on small and medium businesses, a lot of questions are pertaining to them. So coming to SMBs, does PR magic work wonders for them, or should they just stay away from PR?
Well, I mean, it's not magic, it can't fix your, if you have a bad reputation or you haven't done any PR, it's not going to work overnight. And I think that's a really important point. Thank you for asking the question, because I have been having this conversation with other PR people and with prospective clients, and still sometimes they don't seem to understand, especially, I mean, it's never easy, but right now it's even harder because there is so much going on. People are just overwhelmed, distracted. There's COVID, our economy is, so there's just a lot of things going on. So on a regular day, which I don't know when the last time we had a regular day was, but on a good day, you might get a reporter to read your pitch, but on a day when there's 50 breaking news stories, they're not going to maybe care or even pay attention to something that you send them. So you have to be you have to give it time, I guess is what I was trying to get to there. So in that way, I think that's a really important piece of it, is that, if you're going to start doing a PR effort, you have to give it time. You can't send out one press release or one pitch and say, oh, nobody responded. It doesn't work. PR doesn't work. That's not really what we want. We kind of want to sink some time and effort and be consistent. I think that's one thing I talk about all the time with whatever you're doing. You just have to keep showing up. You can't just put one tweet or one post or one press, you kind of have to stick in there with it. And if you're not going to do that, you might want to just hold off until you're kind of ready to do that. In fact, I talk to people sometimes and I say, I don't know if you're ready for PR. You really have to have someone, even if they hire me as a consultant, for example, I still need somebody at the client who's going to be engaged and help me understand what their stories are, their perspective is, what are the trends they're watching, who are their, what competitors are they really focusing on. We need somebody engaged on the client side to help us be successful for them. So
so SMBs, if you wanna get into the PR game, get in with a long-term focus. Anyways, when I was writing an article very let's talk about some tactics. What are some of the key PR tactics which SMB owners can attempt, or even get a PR consultant even for that? So what are some of the key tactics?
Well, I mean, usually when I start working with a new client, one of the first things we talk about is what do you have to talk about? Like what kind of news, what kind of stories? Maybe we plan on a calendar. I know like some companies won't do product announcements anymore, but for companies in certain vertical industries like manufacturing, there are publications, trade publications that cover new products. And so we would talk about what products they have coming up. We would talk about, do they have any big partnerships? Have they won any big new customers? Have they added any executives to the team? We would talk about, any milestone. I have one client's been in business for 70 years. That's kind of a big deal because you see that all the time. So, that might go on the calendar of something. And then we kind of plot out like, I'm not one to say, I've talked to clients who say, well, we want to do 2 press releases a month. And I'm like, well, that's not really the right way to look at it. I mean, if you have 2 pieces of news, you might do 2, but honestly, I kind of go at it from like what is newsworthy and what is really going to maybe get a reporter's attention. Sometimes that doesn't involve a press release either. Sometimes that's just pitching a story without a press release. So that's also, an option.
Right. All right. So moving on, how important are press releases and getting featured in local publications for SMBs?
Well, now there are people who say press releases are not important and they're dead. That was my very first contributed article to PR Daily. Press releases are not dead. And that was probably, 5 or 6 years ago. But people are still saying it. So, but just last week I had a reporter say, do you have a press release? Because I sent a pitch without a press release. And because the client didn't really want to write a press release, which is another, of course, time and money and et cetera. So we're like, okay, well, we'll pitch it without a press release. But they asked me for a press release because that's kind of the language that they look for, and it's also usually inverted pyramid. So it's the most important, and it's who, what, when, where, why, how, all right there. There's a style, there's a, inverted pyramid and all that. But so anyway, I do still believe in press releases. I don't think you have to write one every single time, but I think that there's still a value in it. And even just the process of getting the messaging right, it helps get everybody on the same page. You have a document you can go back to. You can post it on your website. You could put it on social media. In addition to pitching it, hopefully you get a story. You get a reporter write story that you can put on social media. But there are, things you can do with the press release besides, it doesn't only serve to work with the media. But I think they're still valuable. So.
Right. And what about getting published in local publications?
I think that's a good place to start. I have clients. I started my business out on the West Coast in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I never went into a client out there who said, just get us in the local paper and your job is done. Here in Columbus, where I'm at now, people do think that way a little bit more. I think people are less likely to think bigger maybe, and maybe they're more modest about tooting their horn. I'm not sure. But anyway, I have theories about that. But that's another episode. But Michelle goes into psychology. But but yeah, so yeah, but I do think local is a good place to start if you have never done that before. I do like clients to think beyond local. Trade publications. It doesn't have to be business publications like the Wall Street Journal. It doesn't have to be big national media. It could be, okay, we're going to pitch the local business journal, the local paper. Maybe if it's a TV, there's a visual element, you might pitch TV or something. And then we would think about maybe trade publications or other places we can pitch the story besides, because if you pitch local media, it's going to be good for the immediate, but they're not going to do a story on you every month. They're probably not going to do another story on you for a while. So you really need to be thinking what else are we going to do? Yeah. So I was talking to clients too about other ways to get their news out. If you can't get a story, what can you do instead? There are other things you can do.
Right. So that's the next question connecting to.
Yeah.
So what are some of your top advice for SMB owners who want to take baby steps in PR tactics?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's fine to start small. Again, I think there's maybe some fear around even pricing it out or considering it because you think it's going to be very expensive and you might be that might just put you off. I know I have I'm solopreneur, I have a small business, however you want to say it, and I have to be cost conscious because I don't have the budget like of a giant corporation, right? So I get it. Like that's kind of when I started out, that was kind of my philosophy, was like I worked in an agency and I saw that not everybody could really afford, a monthly thousands of dollars, retainer type of thing. So I thought, well, this way they get someone with experience at a lower cost. It's more flexible. And so that's one thing to think about when you're starting. And then if you want to do it yourself, there's plenty of places where you can look for guidance. You can try, maybe writing a press release and maybe putting together a very, small media list of some local reporters or industry trades that you want to reach out to. And then you can go right onto their website, and usually the masthead's there, and just find the editor or reporter that covers the beat that your news falls under. I mean, that's a way to start. You can do it. You can do it yourself. You can.
Right. I've seen portals like Harrow helping a reporter out,
Yep.
which has a lot of information on the right reporter to pitch to, etc. So there are a lot of ways to do it. Just you have to get started somehow.
That's right. Yep.
So my next question is kind of, whenever there is a debate between advertising and PR, there's a factor that stands out in favor of PR. So how can a good PR strategy help SMBs or organizations build trust with the public?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I do. And then when I give talks about like PR 101, one of my first slides is the difference between PR and advertising, because I do think people are confused.
Right. Absolutely.
So, I mean, I have this little chart, which I won't bring it up right now, but actually the difference, I mean, honestly, is that, when you buy an ad, you know what it's going to say. You control what it's going to say, and you wrote it. So you're talking about yourself, right? Which you're going to say good things, right? So the difference, I mean, so with PR, which are, paid media versus earned media, we could also say it that way. You are going to have to convince a third party, a reporter who is trained to be subjective. And in journalism school, they do train you not to bring your bias into a story, not to say it never happens, but for people to mistrust journalists, that doesn't resonate with me, because I've been through the training, and I know that they are in most cases honestly trying to be unbiased about a story. So anyway, so that means that you have sold your story, you have sold your idea to cover the story to a reporter. They write a story. Hopefully it's subjective. It's not biased. So it's a third party talking about you, which is much more credible than you talking about yourself. So, I mean, to me, that is the fundamental difference.
Right. Yeah, I've had this conversation with some SMB owners where they say that let's buy a hoarding. Let's buy a hoarding and put up an ad saying we are the best or whatever it is. So it's kind of weird to have that conversation anyways.
Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned about earned media. So PR is always considered as an earned media. Is that true? If yes, why?
Well, I mean, I consider it earned media, but there are paid opportunities. Now, the thing that really bothers me about it, and this is happening more and more, and again, if you do follow me on Twitter, I talk about it and I share examples and other people talk about it. We get into conversations. What will happen now, publications are media outlets, I should say, are so desperate to make money and stay in business, which I get it. I understand that they will try to trick people, or maybe they're not. Maybe they're not trying to trick people, but people are tricked into paying for what they think is earned media, what they think is PR. And it really isn't the same thing, because, they're going to have to note somewhere that this is a paid opportunity. And if you have, like I always look at that before I share an article, I always look, if it's paid, I probably won't share it. I mean, not to say that there's anything wrong with it. I think that there's probably room for both in some cases, but honestly, I hate that. I don't like that publications are trying to fool like innocent, especially smaller businesses, into paying for something that they shouldn't really be paying for. Awards are really bad. I mean, the awards industry is getting like just blatantly like buy an award, and that to me, again, I don't think it's credible. Like, I mean, maybe to some people, but I mean, if you know what you're doing, I don't know that that wouldn't stand out in a bad way to you and make them look less credible. So
Right.
I have a problem with that kind of thing.
Right. So recently, I wanted to write for a big publication. I don't want to take names.
Right.
And I reached out to them, and they told me that if I want to get published, I need to pay them $1,500 for their Asia edition. So I was surprised to hear such a big amount for an Asia edition. So that was a shocker for me. Anyway, so now I read the articles on that publication very carefully. We don't know, who has paid for what.
Yeah, right. No, that's the thing. And I mean, I will name a name if you don't mind. Forbes. A lot of things on Forbes are now paid, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if that's what you want to do, but I mean, I think it muddies the water, and it does take away from some of the like earned media, real journalism that's going on. And again, like I don't know, it feels a little bit wrong to me, but I'm not going to tell people never to pay for some of those things, I guess, as long as it's not all that you're doing. I mean, you should also be pitching stories and trying to get like real stories done, I think too, but anyway.
All right. So again, these are kind of the mistakes you want to avoid. So my next question is that what are some of the key things that SMB owners should keep in mind when they are moving ahead with their PR plan? What mistakes to avoid?
Well, I think when you do it yourself, you can make the mistake of falling for things because they'll email you, these organizations will email you and try to sell you things. Sometimes it's thousands of dollars. There are even PR people who claim to be, reputable PR people who will email you and try to sell you earned media. Now, that is not the way it's supposed to work. Yes, you need to pay a person for their time if you're working with a consultant or an agency or whatever. You are paying for the service, but you shouldn't be paying for the actual coverage. And in that way, if you don't have somebody looking out for you that understands, it stands out to me immediately. Like as soon as I see the email, I'm like, oh no, here it comes again. Like, oh, and sometimes my clients will forward me stuff and say, is it something we should be? And I'm like, no, no. Just get rid of it right now. Just throw it away. Don't look at it again. I think it's helpful to have somebody with an eye for that stuff, but that's a mistake. I think also remembering that when you pitch a story, you need to talk about how you're solving a problem versus writing how you would write like an ad, like saying, okay, 50% off, the best solution, no, this is about like, what are you doing to help the person that would be buying your product or solution? Like, how does that help them? How does it solve their problem? Think about it like that. And a lot of companies struggle with that. So that can be a mistake. And then like starting and then not keeping up with it. I mean, not being consistent. Like I said, I've heard people say, well, we wrote one press release, nothing happened. We even paid for a wire service, which that's another thing we could talk about. And that it didn't go anywhere. Nothing happened. We didn't get any stories. Nothing happened. So we just gave up, anyway, those are a few things that immediately come to mind.
Got it. All right. So now enough of public relations talk. I want to talk a little bit about you and to hear your story a little bit. So first and foremost thing is you have won several accolades in your exciting career. Yeah. So I want to hear about some of those accomplishments which you are super proud of and very close to your heart.
Oh, well, I mean, the first time I got an entrepreneur was a really big deal. And so that happened because I was writing for PR Daily and they must have had some kind of a relationship with Entrepreneur and they started running my articles. And I was like, someone shared it and tagged me. Of course, sometimes publications don't tag you when they share your articles. Right, which is yet another thing. But don't get me started on that. anyway, so I saw that. I was like, this can't be right. Like I was, and so when I found out that it really was Entrepreneur, that was a pretty exciting day for me. So, and I think they ran a few of my articles. They don't really do that anymore. It's become more of a paid, there's a paid component to Entrepreneur now too. So,
Yep,
yeah.
absolutely. Right. So, your work is featured, as you mentioned, like some of the best publications in the world. So, can you name some of the publications where, if somebody wants to read your articles, understand your insights on PR, which are some of the publications they should check out?
Well, I write pretty much every month from Muck Rack. They have a media database for PR professionals, and they also have a free portfolio service for journalists. So I really like the way that they serve kind of both sides. They keep both sides in mind, and I think journalists like that as well, because again, they compile your stories for you. So actually, my portfolio of like 250 byline articles that I've written is on Muck Rack. But that's one place I write very often. PR Daily. I've written quite a bit for Meltwater. Sometimes I write for industry publications that need a perspective on PR or, marketing for smaller businesses. I think, Freelancers Union, I've written for them. That's another topic near and dear to my heart because I've been on my own for so long that I realize how hard it can be. And so we started Freelance Chat for that reason. And I know we don't necessarily need to talk about that, but that is something I'm really pleased that people have taken to, and it's grown a lot. So
Yep. I think that chat is amazing to get some real good perspectives about freelancing and the troubles which come along with that. Some people think that freelancing is such a lucrative thing to do right now, but it's not. It's a tough journey ahead. Right. So, about your work, you work primarily with B2B organizations. So
right.
What kind of services do you provide to these organizations?
Well, it's kind of evolved over time because social media has changed, a lot of our business, I think. So it used to be more media relations, and I still do that kind of work, but now it's also incorporates social media for some clients. And then writing is really like my first love. And I have been doing more writing, and I really enjoy that a lot. So it's really those three areas: media relations, writing, social media. Those are usually the things. And then, of course, there are tangential things that people will hire me to do and need. We used to do more with the awards programs, but I'm kind of like, I don't know. I'm not sure. And then speaking too. We used to try to land speaking gigs for clients, but it's all virtual. Not to say that they can't speak, but it's that part is a little different than it was. So.
Right. All right. So we have come to the end of the session, but I have one last question, which I ask every guest who comes on.
Yeah.
So, how has COVID-19 impacted Michelle, and how is 2021 gonna look like?
How's it gonna end?
I didn't use that word.
We're still here, right? Like, that's the best case scenario. Well, okay, so it impacted my business, but not in a negative way, because in the beginning it made me, I probably had the best month I had maybe in March, April of last year, because everybody, what happened is that a lot of companies decided all of a sudden, like, oh, our digital presence is really important. Like, we need to be on social media. We need to up our content game. We need to be getting, stories out. And so that became kind of a rush for some people to, and that's fine. Like, that I ramp up and down as I need to, and I like to be there for my clients, and, I'm all about that. So, but yeah, it's kind of, I'd say it's evened out a little bit, although this year is starting out pretty strong. And, I think for people in digital marketing, I think it's a pretty good time, because it is more important than ever to shore up your website, to get on social media, to have all your ducks in a row, to get your content, I think it's I mean, I think they're getting it because, I mean, there's some weird statistic about, and I've written about it before, about how many small businesses don't even have a website and never plan to get one. And I'm like,
Right.
really? Like, how are you going to, what are you going to do? Because when people can't come physically to your store anymore, you have
Right.
to be able to reach them online, sell online. I mean,
Yep. COVID-19 came out as one of the side stories. Was it's time to start storytelling. Actually,
yeah.
a lot of businesses have realized that and putting their efforts on that. All right, so we have come to the end of this session, and I thank you so much for taking time out and coming on the show, because I got a little bit of understanding more about PR, because I'm
Good.
zero in that area. And thank you so much, Michelle, and I hope to speak to you soon.
Thank you, Vivek, so much for having me. It was fun. Thank you.
All right. Hey, so that was a quick session today with Michelle Garrett. She's a PR consultant and writer. As you heard, she writes for a lot of awesome publications, and you should check her out, check her articles out, and get some insights about public relations. Public relation is not only about press releases, folks. It's much more about telling a real story via another medium, which is why it's called earned media. It's not paid, it's earned. You have to earn that story. So if you're an SMB owner, you must be struggling right now, but make sure you have your eyes set on PR and get some stories out about, tell your authentic story about your business, the origin story, etc., etc. And I thank you all for joining today. Episode 30 is out of the way. And this month, we have some pretty awesome guests coming up. So thank you for tuning in. See you all next Friday.